I think the last page we went over in chapter 4 here, Natural Magic, went over okay, despite interruptions. So I'll continue with the occult virtues of things. It is expedient for us to know that there are some things which retain virtue only while they are living, others even after death. So in the colic, if a live duck be applied to the belly, it takes away the pain, and the duck dies. If you take the heart out of any animal while it's warm, bind it to one that has a quartan fever, it drives it away. So if anyone shall swallow the heart of a lapwing, swallow, weasel, or a mole, while it is yet living and warm with natural heat, it improves his intellect and helps him to remember, understand, or foretell things to come. Now, as I've mentioned in the footer, right, that these aren't medical claims here. I'm just saying what's being said. Hence, this general rule that whatever things are taken for magical uses from animals, whether they are stones, members, hair, excrements, nails, or any living thing else, or anything else, they must be taken from those animals while they are yet alive, and if it is possible, that they may live afterwards. If you take the tongue of a frog, you put the frog into the water again. Lama Condizion truly teaches that if you shall take out the tongue of a water frog, no other part of the animal sticking to it, and lay it upon the place where the heart beats of a woman, she is compelled against her will to answer whatsoever you shall ask of her. Well, there's certain vulnerabilities that can open that sort of thing that are people's own choices, but also take the eyes of a frog, which must be extracted before sunrise and bound to the sick party, and the frog to be let go again, blind into the water. The party shall be cured of a tertian ague, also the same will, being bound with the flesh of a nightingale and the skin of a hart, keep a person always wakeful without sleeping. Also, the roe of the forkfish, being bound to the navel, is said to cause women an easy childbirth, if it be taken from it alive, and the fish put into the sea again. So the right eye of the serpent being applied to the soreness of the eyes cures the same, if the serpent be let go alive. So likewise the tooth of a mole, being taken out alive and afterwards let go, cures the toothache. And dogs will never bark at those who have the tail of a weasel that has escaped. Again, if the tongue of a chameleon be taken alive, it conduces to good success in trials, and likewise to women in labor. But it must be hung up on some part of the outside of the house. Otherwise, if brought into the house, it might be most dangerous. Well, attracts vermin, right? Well, sympathetic qualities too, but there are very many properties that remain after death, and these are things in which the idea of the matter is less swallowed up, according to Hindu magic in them. Even after death, that which is immortal in them will work some wonderful things, as in the skins I've mentioned of several wild beasts, which will corrode and eat one another after death. Also, a drum made of the rocket fish drives away all creeping things at what distance soever the sound of it is heard, and the strings of an instrument made of the guts of a wolf, and being strained upon a harp or lute with strings made of sheep guts, will make no harmony. Precious stones and celestial influences. It is common knowledge of magicians that stones inherit great virtues, which they receive through the spheres and activity of the celestial influences by the medium of the soul or spirit of the world. Authors very much disagree in respect of the probability of their actually having such virtues in potentia, some debating warmly against any occult or secret virtue lying hid in them, others as warmly showing the causes and effects of these sympathetic properties. However, to leave these trifling arguments to those who love cavil and contentions better than I do, and as I have neither leisure nor inclination to enter the lists with sophists and tongue philosophers, I say that these occult virtues are disposed throughout the animal, vegetable, and mineral kingdoms by seeds or ideas originally emanating from the divine mind, and through supercelestial spirits and intelligence, always operating according to the proper offices and governments allotted to them, which virtues are infused, as before I said, through the medium of the universal spirit, as by a general and manifest sympathy and antipathy established in the law of nature. Amongst a variety of examples, the lodestone is one most remarkable proof of the sympathy and antipathy I speak of. However, to hasten to the point, amongst stones, those which resemble the rays of the sun by their golden sparklings, as does the glittering stone, atites prevent the falling sickness and poisons if worn on the finger. So the stone which is called the caulis solis, or eye of the sun, being in figure like the apple of the cave, from which shines forth a ray, comforts the brain and strengthens sight. The carbuncle, carnelian, which shines by night, hath a virtue against all airy and vaporous poisons. The chrysolite stone, of a light green color, when held against the sun, there shines in it a ray like a star of gold. This is singularly good for the lungs, and cures asthmatical complaints. And if it be bored through, and the hollow filled with the mane of a donkey, and bound to the left arm, it chases away all foolish and idle imaginations, and melancholy fears, and drives away folly. The stone called iris, which is like crystal in color, being found with 6 corners, when held in the shade, and the sun suffered to shine through it, represents a natural rainbow in the air. The stone heliotropium, green like a jasper or emerald, beset with red specks, makes the wearer constant, renewed, and famous, and conduces to long life. There is likewise another wonderful property in this stone, and that is that it so dazzles the eyes of men that it causes the bearer to be invisible. But then there must be applied to it the herb bearing the same name, viz. Heliotropium, or the sunflower. The jacinth also possesses virtue from the sun against poisons, pestilences, and pestiferous vapors. Likewise, it renders the bearer pleasant and acceptable, conduces also to gaining money, being simply held in the mouth. It wonderfully cheers the heart and strengthens the mind. Then there is the chirophyllx, of a red mixture, never found outside the lamaseries of India. There is a certain poison so intensely cold, which preserves the heart of man, being taken out from burning, so that if it be put into the fire for any time, it is turned into a stone, which stone is called the chirophyllx. It possesses a wonderful virtue against poison, and it infallibly renders the wearer thereof renowned and dreadful to his enemies. The author has in his possession a stone called Centaura, which will attract other stones as the lodestone does iron. Most powerful against all poisons, it is spotted like the panther, producing monstrous animals. The Hindu adepts, who are the keenest observers of the operations of nature, know how, by the application of active forms to a matter fitly disposed, and made, as it were, a proper recipient to effect many wonderful and uncommon things that seem strange and above nature. By gathering this and that thing beneficial and conducive to that effect which we desire, however, it is evident that all the powers and virtues of the inferior bodies are not found comprehended in any one single thing, but are dispersed amongst many of the compounds here amongst us. Wherefore it is necessary, if there be 100 virtues of the sun dispersed through so many animals, plants, metals, or stones, we should gather all these together and bring them all into one form, into which we shall see all the said virtues being united and contained. Now there is a double virtue in commixing, one viz. Which was planted in its parts, and is celestial, the other is obtained by a certain artificial mixture of things mixed among themselves according to due proportion, such as agree with the heavens under a certain constellation, and this virtue descends by a certain similitude or likeness that is in things amongst themselves, by which they are drawn or attracted towards their superiors, and as much as the following do by degrees correspond with them that go before, when the patient is fitly applied to its agent, so from a certain composition of herbs, vapors, and such like, made according to the rules of natural and celestial magic, there results a certain common form, of which I shall deliver the true and infallible rules and experiments in chapter 5, where I have written expressly on the same. Ye ought likewise to understand that by how much more noble and excellent the form of anything is, by so much more it is prone and apt to receive and powerful to act. Then the virtue of things do indeed become wonderful, viz. When they are applied to matters, mixed and prepared in fit seasons to give them life, by procuring life for them from the stars and other celestial bodies, I'm sure, but our own spirit, powerfully cooperating therewith. For there is so a great power in prepared matters, which we see do then receive life, when a perfect mixture of qualities do break, the former contrariety, for so much the more perfect life things receive, by as much the temper and composition is free from contrariety. Now, the heavens, as a prevailing cause, do from the beginning of everything to be generated by the concoction and perfect digestion of the matter, together with life, bestow celestial influences and wonderful gifts, according to the capacity that is in that life, and sensible soul to receive more noble and sublime virtues. For the celestial virtue otherwise lies asleep, as sulphur kept from flame, but in living bodies it doth always burn as kindled sulphur, which by its vapor fills all the places that are near. There is a book called A Book of the Laws of Adepts, which speaks of monstrous generations, which are not produced according to the laws of nature. Of these things which follow I know to be true. These of worms are generated gnats, of a horse, wasps, of a calf, an ox, bees. Well, I know these things not to be true, it's just can appear like that, right? Take a living crab, his legs being broken off, and he buried under the earth. A scorpion is produced. No. If a duck be dried into powder and put in water, frogs are soon generated. But if he be baked in a pie and cut in pieces, and be put in a moist place underground, toads are generated. Of the herb, garden basil, bruised and put between two stones, are generated scorpions. Of the hairs of a menstruous woman, put under dung, are bred serpents. And the hair of a horse's tail, put into water, receives life, and is turned into a most prodigious worm. And there is an art wherewith a hen sitting upon eggs may be generated the form of a man, which I myself know how to do, and which masters call the mandrake, and it hath in it wonderful virtues. You must therefore know which, and what kind of matters are, either of art or nature, begun or perfected. Are compounded of more things, and what celestial influences they are able to receive. For a congruity of natural things is sufficient for the receiving of influence from celestial, because, nothing hindering the celestials send forth their light upon inferiors, they suffer no matter to be destitute of their virtue. Wherefore, as much matter as is perfect and pure is, as I before said, fitted to receive celestial influences, for that is binding and continuing of the matter of the soul to the world, which doth daily flow in upon things natural, and upon all things which nature hath prepared, that it is impossible that a prepared matter should not receive life, or a more noble form. Again, instances can happen with these things that are not as, it's talked about. But in terms of psychological and even spiritual experiences that convey these sorts of things, it can literally happen that these one thing is actually generating the other, but we know these things aren't true like that now. Magical and occult binding. Of binding, I have so far spoken concerning the great virtues and wonderful efficacy of natural things. It remains now that I speak of the wonderful power and faculty of fascination, or more properly, a magical and occult binding of men into love or hatred, sickness or health. Also the binding of thieves, that they cannot steal in any place, or to bind them that they cannot remove from whence they may be detected. The binding of merchants, that they cannot buy or sell. The binding of an army, that they cannot pass over any bounds. The binding of ships, so that no wind, though ever so strong, shall be able to carry them out of that harbor. The binding of a mill, that it cannot by any means whatsoever be turned to work. The binding of a cistern or fountain, that the water cannot be drawn up out of them. The binding of the ground, so that nothing will bring forth fruit or flourish in it. Also, that nothing can be built upon it. The binding of fire, that though it be ever so strong, it shall burn no combustible thing that is put to it. Also, the binding of lightnings and tempests, that they shall do no hurt. The binding of dogs, that they cannot bark. Also, the binding of birds and wild beasts, that they shall not be able to run or fly away, and things familiar to these, which are hardly credible, yet known by experience. Now, how is it that these kinds of bindings are made and brought to pass? We must know. They are less done by sorceries, colories, unguents, potions, binding to and hanging up of talismans by charms, incantations, strong imaginations, affections, passion, images, characters, enchantments, impressions, lights, and by sounds, numbers, words, names, invocations, swearings, conjurations, consecrations, and the like. The power of sorceries. Of course, sorcery coming from the word for chance, the word for drug use. Doesn't exactly, like what they do in church, in a lot of churches where they actually have wine in church. That's technically sorcery. The force of sorceries are so very, very powerful. Indeed, they are able to confound, subvert, consume, and change all inferior things. Likewise, there are sorceries by which we can suspend the faculties of men and beasts. Now, as I have promised, I will show what some of these kind of sorceries are, that by the example of these, there may be a way opened for the whole subject of them. Of these, the first is menstruous blood, which, how much power it has in sorcery, I will now consider. First, if it comes over new wine, it will turn it sour. Well, of course. And if it does but touch a vine, it will spoil it forever. Well, again, some plants and animals respond to these things differently. And by its very touch, it renders all plants and trees barren, and those newly set die. It burns up all the herbs in the garden and makes fruit fall from trees. Well, how are you going to get enough of that blood to cover a tree to the point where, it loses its fruit? Because you think if there's enough of it, you can, make the tree sick or something, but it makes dim the brightness of a looking glass, dulls the edges of knives and razors, dims the beauty of polished ivory, and makes iron rusty. It likewise makes brass rusty, and to smell very strong by the taste, it makes dogs run mad. And, being thus mad, if they once bite anyone, that wound is incurable. It destroys whole hives of bees, it drives them away. If it does but touch them, it makes linen black, and that is boiled with it. It makes mares cast their foals by touching them with it, and women miscarry. I don't think there's any proof that you have to keep the menstruous women away from the pregnant women, but it makes donkeys barren if they eat of the corn touched by it. The ashes of menstruous clothes cast upon purple garments that are to be washed change their color, and likewise take away the color of flowers. It also drives away certain portent agues. If they be put into the wool of a black ram and tied up in a silver bracelet, as also if the soles of the patient's feet be anointed therewith, and especially if it be done by the woman herself, the patient not knowing what she uses, it likewise cures the falling sickness, but most especially it cures them that are afraid of water or drink after they are bitten by a mad dog, if only a menstruous cloth be put under the cup. Likewise, if a menstruous woman shall walk naked before sunrise in a field of standing corn, all hurtful things perish. But if after sunrise the corn withers, also they that are able to expel hail, rain, thunders, and lightnings. Know this, that if they happen at the decrease of the moon, they are much greater poison than in the increase, and yet much greater if they happen between the decrease and the change. But if they happen in the eclipse of the sun or moon, they are most incurable and violent poison, but they are of the greatest force when they happen in the first years of the virginity, for then, if they but touch the doorposts of a house, no mischief can take effect in it. Well, might deter people from other reasons. And I do say that the threads of any garment touched therewith cannot be burnt, and if they are cast into a fire, it will spread no further. Also, it is noted that the root of peony, being given with castor and smeared over with menstruous cloth, it certainly cureth the falling sickness. Again, let the stomach of a hart be roasted, and to it be put a perfume made with menstruous cloth. It will make crossbows useless for the killing of any game. The hairs of a menstruous woman put under dung breed serpents, and if they are burnt, will drive away serpents with the fume. So great and powerful a poison is in them that they are a poison to poisonous creatures. Well, a lot of this is overshot, but certainly the belief in these things has power. I next came to speak of Zixa Miazu, which among sorceries are not accounted the least, and this is a little venomous piece of flesh, the size of a fig and black, which is in the forehead of a colt, newly foaled, which, unless the mare herself doth presently eat, she will hardly ever love her foals, or let them suck, And this is a most powerful philter to cause love, if it be powdered, and drank in the cup with the blood of him that is in love. Such a potion was given to Medea by Jason. There is another sorcery which is called Zeeks Amiazu, viz. A venomous liquor issuing out of the share of a mare at the time she lusts after the horse. The civet cat also abounds with sorceries, for the posts of a door being touched with her blood. The arts of jugglers and sorceries are so invalid that evil spirits can by no means be called up or compelled to talk with them. This is very certain. Or perhaps they just, the person doesn't take their, they don't take the person's side to the point where they feel satisfied with doing these things. Also, those that are anointed with the oil of her left foot, being boiled with the ashes of the ankle bone of the same, and the blood of a weasel. The ankle bone of the same shall become odious to all. The same also is to be done with the eye being decadent. Wait, the ankle bone of the same. So they get the oil off the person's foot and they cut off the foot? Is that what they're doing? The same also is to be done with the eye being decadent. If anyone hath a little of the straight gut of an animal about him, and it is bound to the left arm, it is a charm, that if he does but look upon a woman, it will cause her to follow him at all opportunities, and the skin of this animal's forehead withstands witchcraft. I next come to speak of the blood of a balisk, which the Hindus call the blood of Saturn. This procures by its virtue for him that carries it about him good success of petitions from great men, likewise makes him amazingly successful in the cure of diseases and the grant of any privilege. I say that a tyke, if it be taken out of the left ear of a dog, and it be altogether black, if the sick person shall answer him that brought it in, and who standing at his feet shall ask him concerning his disease, there is certain hope of life, and that he shall die if he make him no answer. It is sure that a stone bitten by a mad dog causes discord, if it be put into drinks. And if any one shall put the tongue of a dog dried into a shoe, or some of the powder, no dog is able to bark at him who hath it. A more powerful this, if the herb hound's tongue be put with it, and the membrane of the secundine of a female dog does the same. Likewise, dogs will not bark at him who hath the heart of a dog in his pocket. Or perhaps they'll bark even more. Really, you shoot a jug, and I'm a jug, and maybe not. But the red toad, living in briars and brambles, is full of sorceries, and is capable of wonderful things. There is a little bone in his left side, which being cast into cold water, makes it presently hot, by which also the rage of dogs are restrained, and their love procured, if it be put in their drink, making them faithful and serviceable. If it be bound to a woman, it stirs up lusts. On the contrary, the bone which is on the right side makes hot water cold, and it binds it so that no heat can make it hot while it there remains. It is a certain cure for quartans, if it be bound to the sick in the snake's skin, and likewise cures all fevers. The St. Anthony's fire restrains love and lust, and the spleen and heart are effectual antidotes against the poisons of the said toad. Also it is true that a sword with which a man is slain hath wonderful power, for if the snaffle of a bridle or bit or spurs be made of it, with these a horse ever so wild is tamed, and made gentle and obedient. Again, if you dip a sword with which any one was beheaded in wine, it will cure the quartan, the sick being given to drink of it. There is a liquor made, by which men are made as raging and furious as a bear, imagining themselves in every respect be changed into one. And this is done by dissolving or boiling the brains and heart of that animal in new wine and giving anyone to drink out of the skull, while the force of the draught operates. He will fancy every living creature to be a bear like to himself. Neither can anything divert or cure him till the fumes and virtue of the liquor are entirely expended, no other distemper being perceivable in him. And so, berserker shape-shifting isn't quite so literal. It's just this sense. The most certain cure of a violent headache is to take any herb growing upon the top of the head of an image, the same being down or hung about one with a red thread. It will soon allay the violent pain thereof. So get yourself a chia pet. Of course, there's real benefits that can be backed up to the chia seeds, but magical lights and lamps. There are, made by the adept, some kind of lamps, torches, candles, and the like, of some certain and appropriate materials, and liquors opportunely gathered and collected for this purpose, which, when they are lighted and shine alone, produce some wonderful effects. There is a poison from mares, after copulation, which being lighted in torches, composed of their fat and marrow, doth represent on the walls a monstrous deformity of horses' heads, which thing is both easy and pleasant to do. The like may be done of donkeys and flies, and the skin of a serpent or snake, lighted in a green lamp, makes the images of the same to appear, and grapes produce the same effect, if, when they are in their flowers, you shall take a phial and bind it to them, fill with oil, and shall let them remain so till they are ripe, and then the oil be lighted in a lamp. You shall see a prodigious quantity of grapes, and the same in other fruits. If centaury be mixed with honey, and the blood of a lapwing, and be put in a lamp, they that stand about will be of a gigantic stature, and if it be lighted in a clear evening, the stars will seem scattered about thee. The ink of the cuttlefish, being put into a lamp, makes blackamoors appear. So also, a candle made of some saturnine things, such as a man's fat and marrow, the fat of black cat, with the brains of a crow or raven, which being extinguished in the mouth of a man lately dead, will afterwards, as often as it shines alone, bring great horror and fear upon the spectators about it. Of such like torches, candles, lamps, and so on, of which I shall speak further in the chapter of Mamiel and magical attraction. Now, of course, one of the things that people say about sorcery is that you're working with the demons. Some language terms, the seher, or seher, the ancient Egyptians had two forms referring to the internal and the external forms of the working with the evil spirits. But why are they trying to get you to do stuff with dead bodies and menstrual blood and all that other stuff? Well, it's like a humiliation sort of for the human, right? Fascination and binding. The art of fascination, I call fascination a binding because it is effected by a look, glance, or observation in which we take possession of the spirit and overpower the same of those we mean to fascinate or suspend, for it comes through the eye, and the instrument by which we fascinate or bind is a certain pure, lucid, subtle, generated out of the firmament of the purer blood by the heat of the heart, and the firm, determined, and ardent will of the soul, which directs it to the object previously disposed to be fascinated. This doth always send forth by the eyes rays or beams, carrying with them a pure, subtle spirit or vapor, into the eye or blood of him or her that is opposite. So the eye, being opened and intent upon any one with a strong imagination, doth dart its beams, which are the vehicle of the spirit, into whatever we will affect or bind, which spirit striking the eye of them who are fascinated, being stirred up in the heart and soul of him that sends them forth, and possessing the breast of them who are struck, wounds of their hearts, infects their spirits, and overpowers them. Well, one of the keys to ending suffering is not necessarily changing difficulties or ending poverty or something. It's the distinction between the planes, as you call it. The psychological planes are different from the spiritual planes, and the physical plane is different from the mental planes. So but the one can influence the other, right? Know likewise that in witches, those who consciously make pacts with demons, because a lot of the Seher here, they're not knowing, they just feel like there's power and something comes in and works with it. They tend not to know. But know likewise that in witches, those are most bewitched, who, with often looking direct the edge of their sight to the edge of the sight of those who bewitch or fascinate them, whence arose the saying of the evil eyes, for when their eyes are reciprocally bent one upon the other, and are joined beams to beams, and lights to lights, then the spirit of the one is joined to the spirit of the other, and then are strong ligations made, and most violent love is stirred up only with a sudden looking on, as it were, with the darting look, are piercing into the very inmost of the heart, whence the spirit and amorous blood, being thus wounded, are carried forth upon the lover and enchanter, no otherwise than the spirit and the blood of him that is murdered is upon the murderer, who, if standing near the body killed, the blood flows afresh, which thing has been tried by repeated experiments. So great a power is there in fascination, that many uncommon and wonderful things are thereby effected, especially when the vapors of the eyes are subservient to the affection. Therefore, colories, ointments, allegations, and so on, are used to affect and corroborate the spirit in this or that manner. To induce love, they use venereal coloriums, as seeks a me easy, blood of doves, and so on. To induce fear, they use martial coloriums. So Venusian and Mars category are the eyes of wolves, bear's fat, and tippet cat. To produce misery or sickness, they use saturnine, and so on. Thus much have I thought proper to speak concerning natural magic, in which I have, as it may be said, only opened the first chamber of nature's storehouse. Indeed, I should have inserted many more things here, but as they fall more properly under the heads of magnetism, mummy, and so on, to which I refer the reader, I shall take my leave of the reader for the present, that I may give him time to breathe, likewise to digest what he has here feasted upon, and while he is preparing to enter the unlocked chambers of magic and nature, I will procure him a rich service of most delicious meats, fit for the hungry and thirsty traveler, through the vast labyrinths of wisdom, Hindu magic, Indian occultism, and true science. Note: it seems unnecessary to add that all these things are not to be taken in their external and literal sense. Okay, at least he said it back then. As I have made no attempt to clothe my writings with metaphors and allegory, in which some authors indulge to the fullest extent, but the disciple of art magic should always bear in mind that he is dealing with finer essences, spiritual and occult forces, not with such gross and vile materials. Well, it's good to realize that things become the means, right?